But it's great to be here in Findhorn. You know, for decades we have heard about Findhorn. And we think of giant zucchinis and giant tomatoes and enlightenment and transformation and multiculturalism and international setting. And it's just really a joy for us to be here. We want to thank, at the very top of the list, the Findhorn Foundation and the community here for making us feel so welcome. Thank you.
And I like to say how much we've been touched, our heart's been touched with each of the presenters and people we've met here.
So that's kind of really the beginning of a theme that throughout this morning and then this afternoon, we're going to be really looking at the everyday ways, as well as some global ways, but the everyday ways that we use forgiveness in our lives and that we need forgiveness in our lives, whether it's in our intimate relationships or it's just the small, you know, it's not so much sometimes the big things in our lives, but it's the petty little things in our lives that keep us in judgment and keep us in confusion and keep us in feeling separate. So we're going to move in and out of those themes today.
So there are a lot of different ways of looking at forgiveness, and attitudinal healing is just one way, one lens. And as far as Diane and I are concerned, we're still in the process of forgiveness. We think this is going to be a process the rest of our lives, as long as we're in this physical bodies. We'd like to start out by suggesting maybe there's another way of looking at the world, another way of looking at our perception. And there was a man back in 1987 who was coming to our center. He was around 68 years of age, and a big man, about 280 pounds. And he had cancer of the chest, that lungs had metastasized to many parts of his body. And there was a very major earthquake on that day, about 5:03 in the afternoon. And that morning he'd gone to see his doctor to get a new pain medication. And at 5 o'clock he took his new bottle of medicine out and had it, and it dropped to the floor, and he went down to pick it up, and all of a sudden his body began to shake. And he said, "My God, what did the doctor give me? I think it's going to kill me." And then all of a sudden he saw the floor going back and forth, and the refrigerator going back and forth. He put his arms in the air and said, "Thank God it's an earthquake. I'm going to live." So just a little bit of changing our perception, how we look at things, can change everything about how we feel.
Right. One of the things we're always looking at is trying to be conscious of what our purpose in life is. And we have many teachers in our life, and a lot of those teachers are quite small. I guess we can come out here, Jerry, huh? Those, I don't know what, in the shadows. That a lot of the teachers are children, because we work with children around the world and have for many years now. And one particular teacher comes to my mind, and her name was Jessica. And we met her in the mountains in Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains. And she was a friend of friends, and we were taking a nap one day, and we woke up, and she was standing there. And she was a beautiful little girl, and we started to speak with her. And then after a little while, Jerry asked one of his Jampolsky questions. He asked this little girl what she thought the purpose in life was. Because of course he expects that she would know, and of course she did. And this is what she shared with us. She said she thought the purpose in life, she said three things. She said she thought the purpose in life was, one, to make the world better when you left it than it was when you got here. The second thing she said was she thought the purpose in life was to be kind to all living things, and that included the rocks and the trees. And the third thing she said was she thought that the purpose in life was to remember love. She didn't say to find love. She didn't say to seek love. She didn't say to give love. She said to remember love. And so we remember her often now. And we've taken her with us on our trip overseas with children to different countries that were in conflict. And she remains a teacher for us that it's not that we don't know about love, it's that perhaps we forget it momentarily. and that our life in forgiveness helps us uncover and remove the blocks to love.
And yet many of us go through life, you look at our behavior, and we think our purpose is to judge who's guilty and who's innocent. When I was at Stanford Medical School, they shared a story about Professor Zadig. And Professor Zadig was teaching second-year medical students how to do urinalysis, and he didn't want them to do...
You know, urinalysis is to check your urine to see how good or bad it is. Yeah.
And he didn't want them to use the new electronic methods. He wanted to use the old-fashioned methods. So he gave a glass urinal to everyone, and he said, I'll demonstrate what you're supposed to do. And he put his finger in the urine and then put it in his mouth and marked down whether it was sweet or sour. And one of the medical students said, gee, I knew that we're supposed to eat shit when we came to medical school, but not urine. But, you know, medical students are very fearful, and they'll do anything just to get through, and so they did exactly what the professor said. And then the professor just looked at everyone and said, you've all failed. You all are really very stupid. You see, this was a lesson in observation. I put this finger in the urine, but I put this finger in my mouth. And we can all laugh at that. And yet, many of us, if we look back at our past, we see just a little bit of perception that we thought was correct. And we thought that was the truth. And certainly when I was growing up, I had some limited perception that felt like that's the way the real world was. And I wasn't able to learn to read or write. I didn't realize till I was an adult that I had dyslexia. And so in growing up, my parents said, gee, we'd love you more if you got better grades, and the teacher thought that too. I had two brothers that went through the same school that I did, and they did very well, and I was always at the bottom of my class. I flunked kindergarten, actually, and I managed to get out of high school in those days with between a D+ and C- average. And those days you could get into University of California with that kind of grade. But I had to take an English test, which I flunked. And so I had to take what they call a basic English, or dumbbell English, they called it. And I managed to get a D- out of that course. And the professor came up to me the last day and said, Jampolsky, I don't know what you're going to do in life, but for God's sakes, don't ever try to write a book.
13 books later.
And of course, I believed him. The evidence was there. So I kind of grew up sort of like feeling I was a second-class citizen, and this guy was just verifying. And although I knew he was telling the truth, I really didn't forgive him because I thought he was making a judgment against me, but I thought he was correct. And it really wasn't until I was 50 years of age that I wrote my first book. And the point that I'd like to make here is that I don't think I'm the only one here who has a tendency at times to give their power away to another person to decide what they're capable of or not. In the same way that if someone would ask me to draw a drawing of a person, it would be pretty much like a 3-year-old. So I've always known I had no artistic ability, and I had a lot of reinforcement from other people validating that. And it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 years ago that Diane and I decided that we would like to play in the sand, which meant learning how to sculpt. And it's been a very fascinating experience for both of us to find that indeed we had talent in that area, and indeed that the sculpting actually helped our writing. So again, it seems like when we let go of our negative belief system, if we let go of our feelings of limitations, that nothing's impossible.